What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves, physically, emotionally, and spiritually?
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them, visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies? Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Hi guys, my name's Kevin Moore and I'm the host of The Moore Show. Now it's my purpose, my passion, my mission to help you guys become your greatest version. Now you might be looking to find answers on love, connecting with your life's purpose, reuniting with a loved one on the other side, discovering your past lives, or just helping you make sense in finding your direction. Now, as a multi-dimensional channel, I can connect with higher aspects of yourself to help you in this present moment to become your best version and live your most empowered life. Now, you can book myself for a reading by going to tmspsychics.com/Kevin, or you can get a reading from one of my many gifted team of readers. The Moore Show Psychics, helping you transform your present moment to the most loving and happiest it can be. Now I also offer a full money back guarantee, so what have you got to lose? Empower your life today.
Welcome to this World Satsanga on the 27th of May 2017, held in conjunction with Kevin Moore and the Moore Show. And Kevin, again, he's been a wonderful service by allowing this to be broadcast on his YouTube channel as well. Okay, we've got quite a lot to go through today, and so I've got lots of questions, including the agenda I've got in front of me and the meditation as well. So let's carry on. Again, but for those of you who've joined us for the first time, thank you very much for joining us and being part of this community. And for those of you who are continuing to be part of the community, thank you for your dedication. Okay, so let's go to the agenda. First talk is about what the mechanics of incarnation are. And there's a couple of questions here, but why do we incarnate and really what's the point? Then there's a group of questions from some of my participants, and some of them are really deep-seated and deep searching questions, so I'm grateful for those because they challenge me as well. And most of the information, by the way, is channeled information straight away, so I end up going into a different place to get the information. And then we go to the meditation at the end, which is a meditation to connect to the formlessness of the multiverse, because the multiverse in its structure, although it's part of the source, which is ultimately part of the origin, is by definition formless, and its structure that is there for us to use, that is structured, the rest is formless structure, so to speak. Okay, so let's go to the first part of the talk. So the mechanics of incarnation. Well, basically, I'm going to give you a PDF file that's the wonderful lady who transcribes this this broadcast will add to the transcription itself, so that you can get more detail. And that PDF file is an abridged version of some information that's out of my 6th book, The And Dialogue. So it'll help to understand a bit more, so it's a bit more detailed than that. But in general, we are sentient energy, and as sentient energy, we seek to progress on behalf of that entity which created us, which individualized us from itself, and we are individualized units of source, or individualized units of God. And so it created us to allow us to accelerate its own evolution, if you want to call it that, its own experience. And it in turn was created to accelerate the evolution and the experience of its creator, the origin. So we're all working together, we're all part of the same thing in essence, but we're smaller parts. And one of the ways of really accelerating our evolution is to experience difficulties or hardships, or challenges is a better way of saying it. I mean, hardships is something that a lot of people, spiritual people, say that we have to endure while we're here, and a lot of other people say, well, why do we have to experience hardship? But in essence, being incarnate is hard work. So if we think of it in terms of being a challenge rather than hardship, then that's a better way of saying it. So getting back online though, the energy, our sentient energy, our sentience is what we really are, and we occupy a body of energy which is either given to us by source, or we commandeer because we've become a certain evolutionary level, and we can move our sentience from energy or group of energies to energy or group of energies. But in this instance, what we do is as our true energetic selves, and of course the true energetic self is just one way of saying the larger part of us which remains disincarnate, which in some ways we call the higher self, or the oversoul, or the Godhead. Okay, Hindus call it the Godhead. It's the same thing. It's that much larger part of us which stays disincarnate. That separates a smaller part of itself, a smaller aspect, if you want to call it that, we sometimes call it the soul, and projects it into a set of energies which have been agreed and which are assigned to the creation of a form, that form being a human fetus. And so what we do is we create an energy structure around that fetus to allow it to grow and allow the ability of the aspect to animate that form. So the aspect that's projected out moves into or down into the energies associated with the incarnate vehicle. In our case, the human form. There are other forms, lots of other forms of various different frequency levels around the physical universe that we incarnate into, but we just use the human form at the moment. And there's different ways of obviously incarnating as well, but this is what we understand now. So we put that energy is then projected into this form through something called the Hara line. Now the Hara line is an energy, like a little energy tube or hose, if you want to call it that, and it protects the most basic level of communication that can be achieved between the projected aspect or soul and the true energetic self, and it maintains that level of ability. Sometimes that's called the silver cord, sometimes it's called the Hara line. There's all different ways of explaining it and all different ways of seeing it, because the silver cord is a projection of the Hara line in itself. It's not separate to, it's a projection from. Okay, so it's the same sort of thing. So although people see the silver cord coming out of the centre of the body sometimes, if they're clairvoyant, it's actually a projection from the Hara line as it comes down through the centre of the body, through the core of the body. So we project this energy through the Hara line, protects the communication from the aspect or soul to the true energetic self, and it maintains that ability to do so in a limited way, because obviously we're in a lower frequency, and as we're in a lower frequency, our ability to communicate in the way we used to in a higher frequency is significantly reduced. So that allows us to project into lower frequencies. Now there's 10 frequencies associated with the incarnate vehicle, of which 7 we were aware of, but the description of those, the use of those, or the overall descriptor of those is not totally understood. But we have 3 more as well, so there's 10 in total. So there's 3 gross physical, additional 4 spirituo physical, and then there's a 3 purely energetic, and these top 3, the 8th, 9th, and 10th frequencies, excuse me, they are there to allow this sort of step down function between the frequencies that we come from, the higher frequencies that the true energetic self is in, and the human form, the incarnate vehicle. So that allows the higher line to be like a tunnel effect, going a tunnel and a almost like a tundish effect, you know, a funnel effect. Okay, so it comes down into a smaller and smaller energy set. Okay, but the point of being at the 8th frequency, it starts to enter into the vehicle, the human vehicle, in an area close to but not through the crown chakra, and so it comes down to that area, moving down towards an area about 3 inches above the navel and 3 inches in from the navel. That's 7.5 centimetres up from the navel and 7.5 centimetres in from the navel, where it coalesces and starts to connect with the energies associated with the human vehicle. That's the Tantien. Okay, from there it goes downwards and then goes down through each of the legs. So, and then connects with the earth. So it creates a connection with the earth. It grounds us, so to speak. So the hara line comes through, down towards the Tantien, splits out just above the pelvis and down the legs. And our energy, our sentience, and the energy associated with our sentience comes down that hara line, that little tube, and coalesces and starts to spread out from the Tantien, connecting with all of the different energy centres, the meridians, the energy lines, and the major, minor and mini chakras associated with the human form. And that allows us to animate it. So on top of that, we also have a location for the sentience. Now the sentience moves up from the Tantien and sits in an area just behind the heart chakra. And this can be identified as being the soul seat. Barbara Brennan called it the soul seat, and that's basically where our sentience sits. So it's a rather apt descriptor. Okay, you can see more in Barbara Brennan's books, Hands of Light and Light Emerging. They're very good books, and very good descriptors of some of the incarnation process as well. And so that's the mechanics of it. We project this energy down, we connect with the energies, and we animate the human form. And over the next 7 years, from the fetus being conceived and the energies associated with the aspect, the projected aspect from the true energetic self, linking in with that form, there is continuous growth of the fetus from birth as a baby, and then its growth from being an infant up to being a junior, to being a young adolescent around the age of 7. And this 7 years is quite important, because that is where the aspect of the soul starts to integrate more with the energies associated with the human form that is going to be used for experiencing this particular flavour of physicality, so to speak, because we create everything we create around ourselves. Everybody assists in the creation of what we're experiencing, because it's a different way of experiencing the lower frequencies, and how we interact with those lower frequencies in terms of our environment, and those individuals who are also interacting with the environment and interacting with us as well. So it's all part of the experiential and the evolutionary process. But over those 7 years, the connection between the aspect and the body starts to grow, starts to become more interconnected, and the aspect becomes more immersed in the incarnation, and the creation of the ego becomes more dominant as well. I'm thinking that I'll probably send another PDF as well with a small or a short, I should say, not small, article that I wrote about what the ego is and how it affects us, to help out with that. It's very important. So that's how we incarnate with the body. That's the mechanics of it. We use the human body basically as a means of experiencing, in this particular part of the physical universe, the environment that's created by the lower frequencies, the multiverse. And we all work with interacting with each other to experience how we interact with each other in these particular low frequencies, and how we interact with the environment in these lower frequencies, and the different ways in which we can interact, different ways in which we can interact with individuals and the environment. And that's the sort of whole reason for it. And the energies associated with the human form are very sort of particular as well. because the first three frequencies are what we generally tend to see with the human eyes, or the culmination of it is anyway. And so we have the first three frequencies deal with the gross physical, that which we can see with our current sensory perception. And then the next four are associated with the spiritual physical, that which is still physical but beyond our sensory perception. This what they call it. Sometimes it's called the astral, but people think that the fourth level is the astral. But actually, my understanding, the next four levels of the astral. So we've got the lower astral, the upper lower astral, the lower upper astral, and the upper astral being on the seventh. And then we've got the three energies above that as well, acting as a step down, or the funnel and the tunnel function. Okay, so we sort of, it's, if you like, we sort of don this suit of clothes, or don this biological robot, energetic biological robot type of thing that we control, this environment suit, if you want to call it that, to experience what's happening here. So what's the whole point of this? Well, it's very simple, and I think I've alluded to this as we go along. Why do we incarnate? What's the point? And in effect, we incarnate because this particular environment and others within the physical universe, for want of a better word, are an evolutionary accelerant. Because we put ourselves in a very challenging environment and in very challenging situations, it allows us to evolve at a really fast and accelerated rate. And so what happens then is that we can move faster through our evolution, and our evolutionary cycle is reduced as a function of that. So we move through the structure of the multiverse as part of our evolution in this particular evolutionary cycle, which is the third. We've had two before, okay, and so the objective is to move through the evolutionary cycle in as clear and as complete a way as possible. And some individuals take a long time to do it because they want to experience the minute detail, and others experience it in the minimal sense, but in a sense that is minimal but nevertheless acceptable, to be able to go through the evolutionary cycle, gain the evolution that they need, and then recommune with the true energetic self, and the true energetic self recommune with source, and then we go on to the next evolutionary cycle later. So really it is all about experiencing challenges, being here to experience challenges. Some of those challenges we like, some we don't. And that depends upon how we find ourselves and how we manage to relate to those challenges and work with those challenges and remove those challenges, or get stuck with those challenges, or how we get stuck with being here, and that's where karma comes into it. And so it's very much a case of we are, while we're going through the evolutionary cycle and we're using the incarnate vehicle to accelerate that evolutionary cycle, we're also subject to various different functions of being in the physical, and the addictions associated with wanting to come back, wanting to experience status, wanting to experience sensory stimuli, wanting to experience various different thought processes, various different ways of being, are all part of the, if you like, the addiction to being here and what we call karma. Okay. And it's only when we go through those addictions and we can be here but not be of here, i.e. we experience things in a detached way, still being responsible for our responsibilities, and then but are able to move on very, very quickly. That's when we start to get to the point where we don't need to incarnate here, because we've mastered being incarnate, and therefore we've evolved to the point where we no longer need to incarnate. So it's all about experiencing, learning and evolving in as fast a way as possible. And there are a lot of very brave aspects or souls who put themselves in significant stress. You've seen some of or you've heard of some of the stories of people going from rags to riches, or from various different states of being on the wrong side of the law, for instance, and then becoming very prominent citizens and doing a lot of good work. And these are people who really do put themselves in a taxing or a very challenging life plan, so that they can assist themselves and their creator in moving forward as fast as possible. And it's not, and a lot of souls that do this, and a lot of souls don't quite come out the other side, and they have to take a few lives to sort themselves out and perfect the particular type of life life plan that they're trying to experience as well. So it is hard work, but it's all about evolving. It's all about experiencing, learning, and evolving. That's the whole point of it. Okay, I say there's a bit more. I'll make sure I send the article on the ego, what that means, and I'll also make sure that I send the article on, or the extract from the Andal as well, to help with that, because it's important to know, and it actually gives us quite a lot of consolation and consoles us to understand what the point is and why we experience things that we classify as being not nice or horrible versus nice things. And before I continue on with the questions now, I think it's important to understand that we can't just experience one particular angle on things. Okay, people say, well, what kind of a God have we got if it lets us experience pain or problems or ill health or lack of money? And the answer is, we've chosen it. and the whole point is if we had just wonderful health, long life, delightful families, lots of abundance in terms of family, friends, and fortune, and we had that in every life, we would not really be experiencing the whole gamut of possible experiences that could be here as well, and all the different parallel experiences that come with those by the invocation of event space when we have different decisions to make. So we have to experience every aspect of existence, of any form of existence, to be able to say that we've mastered it and understood it. Okay, so that's why we don't just get good lives all the time. We choose to have what we have, and so if we want to blame somebody, we should blame we should blame ourselves. But we shouldn't blame ourselves. We should just get on with it and do it, and make the best of what we've got, and be successful in this particular incarnation, rather than having to spread it out over a few incarnations, which is what normally happens. Okay. Oh, excuse me. I appear to have a bit of a frog in my throat. Okay. So let's have a look at some of these questions then. There's quite a few questions here, and I'll try and read them out. They'll be part of the transcription anyway, so you'll be able to see them as well as hear them. Okay, so I've got a little friend here. One of my little cats has decided wants to take part as well. Okay, so the first question is from the lovely lady who does my transcriptions, and she's got two sets of questions given at separate times. But the first one is, what's my take on the so-called shamanic soul retrieval, or soul fragmentation, or soul loss? And there's some background to this, and it goes like this. Shamans believe that whenever we suffer an emotional or physical trauma, or part of our soul flees the body in order to preserve the experience and goes to a non-ordinary reality, where it waits until someone facilitates its return, the types of trauma could be caused by soul loss, including some kind of abuse, which could be, for instance, sexual, physical, or emotional, or an accident, or being at war, or victim of a terrorist attack, acting against our morals, for instance, or being in a natural disaster, such as a fire, a hurricane, earthquake, or a tornado. Other things like surgery, addictions, divorce, or death of a loved one also could be part of it. And the shamans say that the soul part that left usually does not come back on its own. The soul might be lost, or stolen by another person, or doesn't know the trauma has passed until it's safe to return. In psychology, this is called disassociation, but they don't talk about what disassociates and where the part goes. Is this really going on in these situations, in my view? In my understanding, the soul is always connected to the human vehicle. Okay, we don't lose the soul. If the soul moves out of the vehicle and stays out of the vehicle, and the vehicle demises, and full stop. There are instances where yogis spend extended periods of time in astral travelling, or transcendental meditation, as it's popularly called now. But the connection to the body via the hara line or the silver cord, or whatever nomenclature you want to use, remains. And so the soul, or the aspect, is connected continuously to the body. And so there cannot be soul fragmentation as such, or soul loss. But in terms of soul fragmentation, the only thing I can think of that would classify being as a fragmented soul is when we have shards being created. And so it's not actually a fragmentation, but it's a designed by ourselves function of individualizing a smaller part of our sentience and assigning it to another form to experience a parallel condition, not parallel in terms of event space or a parallel universe or a parallel experience, but an additional experience to help with understanding different things concurrently. So that's what I would classify as being soul fragmentation. But in terms of this part of a soul or some part of the soul being disassociated from the human form as a result of any of these different experiences of trauma, I would say that's not the case. I would say basically what happens at times is that the ego chooses not to experience that experience again. It classifies it as being traumatic and decides to forget it. And the only potential way of getting that back would be through some form of healing. And you may well call shamanic soul retrieval as a form of healing. And or some hypnosis technique. So really it's about disassociating the experience with the individual and locking away that memory. It's still there and it's still recorded by the true energetic self, and it still can be accessed by us if we decide to access it later. But in essence, it's something that we don't want to face or don't want to cope with, and so we lock it away. And it's more of a psychological function brought about by the ego than it is an actual function of the soul being, some part of the soul being lost and in some limbo state or in an alternative state of reality. I think there's been some confusion with a lot of this stuff, and I think that if there was sort of a need to retrieve aspects of souls, it could be that if there's an individual who has entered into, for instance, transcendental meditation or astral travelling and is needed back, and one of the ways of getting that person back is to have somebody else with the same skill go and retrieve that person. So that could be called soul retrieval, and that happens quite a lot, and used to happen quite a lot in India, where there was people who spent dramatically long amounts of time in their astral travelling or transcendental meditations, and they were so happy in their sort of energetic environment that they didn't want to come back into their physical environments, and so we have a situation where they're supposedly lost. Okay, and therefore they need to be retrieved at times. At times when it's important, but that would be done by somebody who can do the same thing, have the same function. So I don't think it's fully understood. I think the understanding is a bit flaky, to be honest, a bit misunderstood. It's simply a case of a memory not wanting to be relived from my perspective, and the instance of soul fragmentation is to do with having a shard or even a sub-incarnation. That's another way of saying there's a soul fragmentation, but they're not due to trauma. They're due to a planned action by our aspect. Okay, that's a good question. Next one is from WP. Okay, since the time of Jesus and before, and up to the last 70 years, there's been a famine, plague, war, and/or raping and pillaging about every 10 years or so, with non-stop, with millions being killed in the process. It's a pretty sad commentary on the human race. Now, for the first time in history, the incidence of these traumas has dropped significantly, and in some cases stopped altogether, which is encouraging. The current issues of the day seem relatively minor by comparison. However, as we've discussed, it seems like we're backsliding in the near term, and with people becoming hysterical over very little news that emanates from the media, real or imagined. It's mostly imagined, apparently. So people have become news or politics junkies, surrendering their personal sovereignty in the process, expecting politicians to save them. This doesn't bode well for the future. Or are people awakening? Then it's apparent who will break the end of this bankrupt mentality. Okay, I'll say that again, because I think I've read it wrong. Or are more people awakening than is apparent who will end the break in this bankrupt mentality? Yes, as I was reading that, I started to feel that there are, in essence, significant levels of triangulated ascension happening, where triangulation happening, where the work of individuals in the spiritual sense is affecting others all around us. And so they get pulled up the frequencies as a result of the work of others, a natural function, and eventually they get to the point where they do start to awaken. They do start to realise that what they're doing or what they're participating in and what they're liking is suboptimal, so to speak, and isn't particularly enlightening and isn't assisting them in their own evolution. And so they do, and people are and have and are continuing to, although we do have the odd spike, the odd area of low frequency around the world, but in general there is a movement upwards in the ascension process, where people are becoming more aware and awake and are starting to question the environment that they're in and the interactions with individuals within that environment and the wider environment they exist in. So basically we are starting to come out the other side, but we do have little areas of low frequency. For instance, in the UK, recently in Manchester, we had a suicide bomber go to a pop concert and blow themselves up and kill and seriously injure a large number of other individuals. And again, this is a focus on two things. One, it is an act of low frequency, and the other thing is it's on the positive side, it helps to bring people together and realise that these sorts of things aren't good. No matter what religion you're from, or what persuasion you're from, or what thought process you have, everybody realises that this isn't a justifiable action and justifiable thought process. So it has two things. One, it has a function in terms of it illustrates we do have locally low areas of frequency, but also there can be positive parts and positive things come out of it as well. So yes, and the fact that we are getting positive results as a result of some of these atrocities is illustrative of the fact we are moving up the frequencies. So that's a very good question. Thank you. Next one is when I talk about being aware and awake. This is US again, the lady who does the transcriptions. When you talk about being aware and awake again, how do I define those terms in more practical terms? What is awareness versus awakening? Is there a basic awakening followed by a series of deepened awakenings? Is awakening just the beginning of the enlightening process? Does it ever stop or reach a limit for an entity, like an aspect or soul, or true energetic self or higher self? Well, awareness and awakening is something which is attributable really to the incarnate aspect or soul. And as a result, it's all about us realising that we are something more than we are, and that we should start to become less immersed in our incarnation and more, for want of a better word, immersed in understanding our greater reality and the environment surrounding that and the individuals within it. So, so awareness is a function of awakening, if you want to call it that. It's almost the first start, where we start to understand that there is something beyond what we are as the human body. Now, when we incarnate, the ego is created as a function of the almost total separation of the aspect energetically from the true energetic self. So the ego is created, creating an individualised personality, which associates itself entirely with the human form. But we do get to the point where we start to become aware of a greater reality as a result of our work, our evolution, and our ascension to the frequencies and our evolutionary condition. So we become aware of more things. We start using intuition, we start to trust the intuition, we start to become more capable in what we're doing. Okay? So as a result of that, we start an awakening process. An awakening process is, I'm going to say, similar to enlightenment. Enlightenment is a function of awakening, where we get towards the enlightened state where we're able to connect with Source, disassociate our consciousness with the body, human form, and move around the greater reality at will, without relating to and communicating with other entities, disincarnate or incarnate, to be able to allow us to, for want of a better word, experience more of what we are part of. And so the awakening part is understanding and experiencing aspects of that greater reality at various different frequential states associated with our ascension through the frequencies whilst being incarnate. And so we start to become more awake, more aware. So awareness is the start, but so it's a bit of an iterative loop here. The more we awake, the more we're aware of what's happening around us, and therefore the more we become awake, until we eventually get to this part of this point where we are able to not only, if we're dedicated, master the environments that we're in and master the human form, but also choose when and where to disassociate ourselves with the human form as we want to. Because we've reached the enlightened state where we are in total communication with Source and true energetic self. And so we just use the human body literally like we use a motor car. We move in and out of it when we want to. The wider environment is the environment outside of the motor car. The limited environment is the environment within the motor car and the driving around the roads. And so we use different vehicles and we can move through different vehicles if we wanted to. We can choose different vehicles, experience multiple things. So really, the enlightenment is the very end of the awareness, awakening, awareness, awakening, awareness, awakening, iterative loops, and that helps us to move forwards. Okay, so it's an ongoing process whilst we are incarnate, and from an evolutionary perspective, it's an ongoing process with the true energetic self and the aspect or soul on behalf of the true energetic self, until we reach the end of the evolutionary cycle, and then we recommune with Source, and then the Source moves to a different location within the origin and starts the next evolutionary cycle off, and we experience different things in different ways. But as we move through the evolutionary cycle, we tend to accelerate the evolutionary cycle. It gets faster and faster. And actually, this third evolutionary cycle is much faster than the first two, I am told. And we are moving through it really, really quickly. So we should all be patting ourselves on the back, even though it doesn't feel like it's fast here. It is actually happening fast. Okay. Next question. Our Source has urged us to meditate at least 30 minutes a day. What is the fundamental purpose of meditation? What is the purpose of channeling? Are they both meant to increase our bandwidth, or is meditation more of a resting state versus is channeling more aware, questioning and receiving state? Meditation is a function of disassociation from the physical. It's one way of achieving connectivity with Source, self, not in that order, and other beings. And it creates the possibility of channeling. Channeling is a higher function of meditation and is part of the awareness and awakening process, and is also one of the functions of enlightenment. Not the function of enlightenment, it's one of them, and it leads to the enlightenment process. So the whole point of it is to learn to connect with the greater reality, to be in the greater reality and commune, converse and interact with the greater reality, and not just the reality that the human form connects with. That's the whole point of it. The problem is when our eyes are open and our ears are hearing and our nose is smelling and our mouth is tasting, we are immersed in the human state. And so we are confused by that state, and if you want to call it that, completely confused to the point where we are in the full belief that we are the human body. So we need to move ourselves out of that zone. And meditation can get us there. When we get to being an enlightened yogi, so to speak, or individual, we're able through meditation to turn off the senses. So we can enter into a complete state of solitude. So no amount of noise or visual interaction will move us out of that state, and that means that a good yogi can meditate with their eyes open. And if you look at a lot of the old religious paintings, you'll see that a lot of saints have got their eyes pointing up towards their third eye. That's because they're in samadhi, or they're in a state of enlightenment or awareness whilst they're incarnate, and that illustrates to me that the individuals who are painting those images understood that these people were in communion with Source all the time, or God all the time, because their eyes were pointing towards the third eye, and that actually, although they were here, they weren't of here, and they were communing with a greater reality at the same time. So it's a function of switching. It helps us to switch off our association with this particular environment and our human forms, and helps us to move through the possibility of channeling, which is a sort of a lower function, if you want to call it that, in terms of communication with that greater environment and the beings within that greater environment and the greater reality. Okay. So next question is, are human beings meant to reach a point of emptiness where our journey as seeker ends, where we have no more questions to ask? As human beings, yes. At some point, I wouldn't call it emptiness, I would call it full understanding. And at that point, we don't need to incarnate anymore. The need to incarnate disappears, and we have become a very complete individual. And so we can move on from incarnation and go and just continue our evolution in the rest of the multiverse in the disincarnate state. There's something else to this. He said, we're meant to continue to expand our thought processes to the higher and higher levels. What is the ideal for an aware or awake human being? The ideal, well, actually, we are, for want of a better word, continually expanding our thought processes to higher and higher levels to the point where we don't need to incarnate. That may take various different incarnations in its own right, but in essence, what we have to do is do the best we can in this particular incarnation. And if we can reach a state of enlightenment in this incarnation, then we can shave off the need for a lot more incarnations to assist in our evolutionary progression. And so we can reduce the number of times we need to incarnate, and we can ascend and evolve faster. So what is the ideal for an aware and awake human being? There is no ideal. It's total enlightenment. That is the ideal, really. And when we've got to that point, we no longer need to be here. And we can choose to stay and help others, or we can choose to move onwards and look after ourselves, so to speak, in our own evolution. There are those who decide to stay here and help others and help them strive to become more aware, awake, enlightened in the process. Okay. Some of these questions, by the way, have come through my lovely transcribers referring to the books by Rick Wyman, Awakening Through the Veils. There's a lot of commonality between individuals who are speaking the truth or know the truth, and so what happens is that we get the possibility of the truth coming out, but through the right channel, so to speak. And so individuals who are working with and are capable of understanding and broadcasting the truth in an unabridged or in a way that we can understand it, are able to do so. And there will be commonality between them. Not through collusion, but through the simple fact that what they're dealing with is the truth. But they will be dealing with it from different angles, maybe, or different levels of truth, or different parts of the truth. Okay, so next question now from JM in H. I'm putting H means the location within the states. H. Okay, so it's JM in H. I'm absorbing deeply on the second reading of Anne's book, This is the Anne dialogue, and hope she's at least somewhat aware of the profound effect her book is having on me and others. From what I can gather, asking this question, she's highly delighted that the book is being as successful as it is. In terms of the sales in the first 6 months, it's from my perspective, it's my bestseller so far, and it's looking to do really, really, really well. And it's providing a lot of additional knowledge for people, and is bringing consolation as well, which is lovely. I'm delighted to have had it published in the first place, and I'm delighted it's being used, and people are referring to it and understanding it and concurring the information as well. So I'm really pleased about that. So the question is, the long paragraph on page 202. I am somebody who does do long paragraphs, by the way, and long sentences, covers the multiple factors that an aspect has to consider before incarnating: education, health, longevity, peer group, career, pastime, service, evolutionary opportunity, difficulty, chance of success. So all the factors that are familiar with and ring true. But the last factor is different: the number of parallel existences that can be utilised in order to maximise the evolutionary opportunity. The question is, I'm aware of parallel existences, and this concept is at so variance with the other factors. Are my parallel existences taking place behind my back, so to speak, or are parallel existences a routine part of incarnate life, as are all the other aspects listed above? Is it possible that I, this is the question, have no parallel existences? Should I have awareness of my parallel existences? Do most human beings have parallel existences going on? And how do those existences affect us? When we do choose the way in which we incarnate, and the location we incarnate, and the family we incarnate into, and the vehicle we have, we do look at the number of times we can do parallel conditions as well. Obviously, parallel existences are created through the invocation of event space. And event space is invoked through our decision process, our ability to decide one direction versus another, or the possibility of deciding, or the possibility of deciding, or the possibility of possible possibilities of deciding. And so there's many different ways in which event space can be evoked, and that can be like localized event spaces, semi-localized, more communal event spaces, wider event spaces, country-sized event spaces, and planetary and galactic, and all those different sizes of event space. But in essence, from our perspective, there's various different versions of us in different other event spaces, and an overall or overarching event space with its own event stream. This, by the way, is coming out of the seventh book, the Curators, and it's becoming a bit mind-boggling. There's an awful lot of event space in that book, and I'm a bit embarrassed to say that, but it might be a bit of a difficult read actually. But there we go. In essence, we all have parallel conditions, and what we do when we do our checking as to what we're going to do is understand how complete that experience will be by the parallelization of that dominant or mainstream experience. And so if we have three decisions to make, do we do this, do we do that, or do we do the other, and we choose one, then actually there's three of us become apparent, and that environment with those other two become apparent or become invoked within their different event spaces are in different event spaces. So we don't see them, we don't experience them. All we know is that we are one of them, and that we as that individual are individualized and normalized to the event space in which we are focused upon. So our particular experience, it could be parallel, or it could be the mainstream, or it could be a fractal of one of the parallels, or a fractal of the fractal, or a fractal of the fractal of the fractal of the fractal of one of the parallels. So we couldn't possibly absorb or work with, from our particular perspective, all of those different parallel existences that are occurring as a result of our decision process, and the potentials, and various different potentials of those different decision process, and the realities that are created from those. It'd be too much for us. So we're only allowed to focus on the one whilst we're incarnate, because our functionality only allows us to do that. And so we aren't aware of them as such. They affect us in totality by the efficiency in which we gather evolution. So from our true energetic self's perspective, it sent out an aspect, and it's becoming incarnate, and it may have created shards as well, which are also considered to be synchronistic, if you want to call it that, in terms of different experiences. But I think concurrent's a better way of saying it. And that allows the maximum amount of experience to be experienced by that particular soul. And so the true energetic self experiences all of those different experiences concurrently. So as there's 10 of me, for instance, experiencing 10 different parallel conditions or 10 different event spaces, then the true energetic self is experiencing all those 10 concurrently at the same time. So So it doesn't affect us per se, although it does ultimately because we're part of our Trinity self. And when we are disincarnate, when this particular body demises and we move back into the energetic, then we will become privy to and be able to access those other experiences. And it'll be like we've done it. And what I'm being told here is that the function we would experience is that it would be a little bit like we've been to the shops, we've been to the same shop, but we've gone to the shop in different ways. We've gone by bicycle, we've gone by motorbike, we've gone by car, we've walked, we've got the bus, we've got the train, and when we've got there, we've got different things to shop. We've bought different things. We've bought groceries, or we've bought clothes, or we've bought shoes, or we've bought newspaper, or etc., etc., etc. So all of these different things occur as a function of the parallel conditions we find ourselves into, and our true energetic self and us as an incarnate being experience it different ways. We experience ours singularly, but when we disincarnate, it's like we've experienced different ways of going to the same place, or different ways of experiencing different things, or we've realised that we've been to various different places at the same time, where we've gone, oh, okay, well, at that point in time, I went to the cinema, I also went to the gym, or I also went to see my friends at home. We get all these different memories that are all there, but they've all occurred in the same space. Okay, so everybody's doing it. And it's difficult for us to. But I do have one individual. There was one of my students in India who was in the unfortunate position, or fortunate for some people, but unfortunate for him, of moving between these different realities of two other versions of himself, and getting lost. He didn't know when he was back in this reality. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know what he'd done. He didn't realise what he'd done. He didn't realise what had happened here. He had different memory sets associated with the different realities he went into. So that was indiscriminate movements between those different realities, and so he struggled with that. And I had to do some work on him there to sort of sever that potential link between him and the other versions of him, so that he could only focus on this particular reality and not move around it indiscriminately and unplanned around the different realities. Okay. And this still happens once in a while, but he's largely under control now, which is good for him. It means he can focus on this particular incarnation. Right, next question is from JM in R. Okay. And the question is, I get the strangest sense of a veil of conformity and or control, as if we are so programmed to think small and live in a limited way. At the same time, a glimpse of unlimitedness that is available as we disengage from the frequencies and wavelengths of the so-called normal world. Is there any way to speed up the process other than just meditating, surrendering and choosing to love instead of fear? So this looks like it's an individualised experience. So it's something that all people who are going through the awakening process to awareness, to awakening to awareness, to finally enlightenment, go through. And it's a case of really keeping on the meditating, keeping on surrendering and choosing love instead of fear, keeping on working on the self, and where possible, where asked, helping others, being of service when you're asked, rather than forcing the service on others, because that can be repelled and it causes resistance. So ultimately it's best to, for want of a better word, keep doing what you're doing, and if you can, do a bit more. So meditating is a very important tool, actually, as he's doing things like Kriya Yoga and the traversing the frequencies work that I teach as part of my particular way of ascending the frequencies. And so when we do more of this, we will have, as we progress, more and more moments of enlightenment, so to speak, where we see through the veil and understand what the greater reality is. And as we do that, we start to recognise there is much more to existence than this. And there's lots and lots of books on this. But one particular book I found really... I don't read books generally, so I've only sort of been told about this particular book, and I've seen a YouTube video from this lady, and it's a book called Backwards, which is really good because it explains what she experienced when she was disassociated from her human form as a result of a near-death experience. and the backwards refers to her being able to see in a 360-degree sphere, which includes going backwards. And that's a good way of that's a good read, or look at the YouTube videos as well. If you put in YouTube backwards, you'll start to see some of these videos this lady's done, and they're very, very good. But basically, it's to do with being disassociated with the lower frequencies of the gross physical. And that's important because it allows us to focus on the higher frequencies. Now, clearly, we have to engage in being here. We're responsible for our duties, for our careers, our roles as a partner to somebody, and maintaining that we pay our bills, etc. There's not many of us could live like Jesus used to, or like the old yogis used to in the States these days. In fact, it's more not the States, in India these days. It's more complicated, much more complicated than it used to be. But what I would say is that extend the meditation and go deeper. It is, if you're capable, it's better to do longer meditations and less of them than it is to do regular meditations and short. When you get to a point where you can access deeper levels of understanding through extended meditations, you'll find that you can do the same level of depth very quickly later. So it's almost like learn to ride a push bike, then a motorcycle, then a car. We have to start at the beginning, and we gradually sort of progress to different levels of competence and ability and functionality as a result of it. And eventually we get to the point where we master the tool that we're using, and that is the meditation process and the functions that allow us to become more connected, and to the point where we do become totally connected. Thing to do is believe, not just believe, but know that this veil of conformity is a small veil. It's just that we make it very big, and that it's easy to move through, but sometimes it takes dedication. And depending upon how we are bombarded by low frequency interactions with others, because they can drag us down as well, and how we protect ourselves depends on how fast we can move upwards and go through that veil. So I hope that answers that question. And we've got another question finally from JM in H again, and it's actually quite a personal question here. It says, at the top of the Origin Speaks at page 278, the Origin tells you, soon you will no longer need to contact your sources or even me to gain this information. And the question is, am I there yet? Or is this one of those all too frequent time statements that have no meaning in our 3D existence, or our 3-frequential existence? In all honesty, I think at times I've gone backwards. when I look at the work I'm doing now, with this particular book, The Curators, I start to think, I'm thinking to myself sometimes, I'm not really progressing as fast as I think I was, or think I should do, or think the Origin thinks I should do. But on the other sense, this could be the ego trying to put doubt into my mind to stop me from moving further, because it knows it will dissolve if I go further up the frequencies. But when I look at it in a different state of mind, there are a lot of times when I do get the information and I haven't contacted Source, I haven't contacted the Origin, I haven't contacted my true energetic self or any other beings. So am I there yet? I'm on the way, I think. is one way of saying it. And that I think that it's going to be an ongoing process. One that will probably, I'm being told, start to come to fruition towards the end of the books that I'm going to write. So that's probably in about 10 years' time. But we'll see. I'm getting the feeling that there's a couple of instances where there's one book I'm going to write where it will be pretty much me understanding information, not so much intuitively or clairsentiently, because those two things mean the same thing, but moreover I'm connecting with the information straight away. So there is going to be one book where that happens, but that's going to be sort of in the future, so to speak. I'm not going to say which one it is because it will give the game away. But yeah, it's an ongoing process, and I think actually if I go into the mindset where I've got it, then I've lost and the ego's won. So I have to keep vigilant and behave and do the best I can to continue that process and not think that I've got there, but think that everything is a continuous process. And even when I'm there, I think that it'll be a case of, well, let's stay vigilant and keep going. Well, thank you for all those questions. And what we're going to do now is the end of Satsanga meditation, which is connecting to the formlessness of the multiverse. Okay, so let's sit in the correct meditative posture. Okay, and feet flat on the ground, back straight with the small of the back. If you've got a straight back chair, that's better. Palms uppermost and placed on the upper areas of the thigh, where the thighs meet the lower body. Okay. I want you to have your closed eye vision focused on the area of the origin of the third eye, which is in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. The third eye is not the third eye chakra. That's a different thing, different component of our energetic body and a different function. So they're different things. Okay. So what we're going to do is just use our hara line, actually, okay, to move ourselves out of our bodies. So rather than using any lift functions we've done with the traversing the frequencies in previous satsangas, we're going to use the hara line. So I want you to visualize that the energy that's in your toes and your feet and your ankles move towards the calves of your legs. And that energy moves up from the calves, past the knees, towards the pelvis. And the energy that's in the pelvis goes towards the Tantien and stays there. The Tantien is 3 inches above the navel and 3 inches in from the front of the stomach into the centre of the body. 3 inches is also 7.5 centimetres. Okay, now we'll move the energy from our fingertips and our fingers and our hands to our wrists. And then move the energies from our wrists to our elbows, and then from our elbows to our shoulders, across the shoulder girdle to the neck where the throat chakra is. All the energies that are associated with the different minor and mini chakras will also be moved at the same time as we're doing this. And then the energy associated with where we think our sentience is, our intelligence in the head, move that down towards the throat area, joining with the energies of the arms and the fingers and the wrists. And then move the energies down the trunk of the body towards the Tantien as well. So all of the animating energies associated with our human form are now situated in the Tantien. 3 inches or 7.5 centimetres up from the belly button or the navel, and 3 inches or 7.5 centimetres in from the belly in towards the centre of the body. And then finally visualise an area of bluish, whitish energy which is sitting behind the heart chakra in the centre of the body, moving back down the hara line area and then down to the Tantien. So everything that is us now sits in the Tantien. And now our energy moves up the hara through the body, past the area where the soul seat is, our sentience sits, up past the area of the throat chakra, up past the area of the spiritual or third eye, and out through the hara, up into the energies past the crown chakra, past the 8th, 9th and 10th energies, and out into the energies associated with the gross physical frequencies that we call the physical universe, past the 11th and 12th, and then outwards and upwards past the 12th, past the 20th level, past the 50th level, past the 100th level, past the 200th level, past the 300th level, just past the 400th level, and stopping on 408. This is the highest frequency within the structure of the multiverse, and is the area of most formlessness within the universe, within the multiverse, that is. From here, just expand your consciousness. Right now, your consciousness or your sentience is a little ball of sentient energy projected up from these low frequencies within the multiverse right up to the highest frequencies. And so allow it to disseminate, dissolve, disperse, whatever you want to call it. Just allow it to just disperse and grow. Notice how there's no nebulae, no galaxies, no suns, no planets, no structure at all as we would know it. Just allow yourself to become immersed in formlessness to the point where you no longer feel the connection with the human form. That you are simply floating in a disembodied state. Stop any stray thoughts of shopping lists, jobs to be done, things you're worrying about, things you need to do, people you need to talk to. Just be here. Allow yourself to drift, expand, be part of this vast environment. As just sentience or consciousness. Nothing to worry about. You're not going to lose yourself. You're not going to become a disembodied soul or need any shamanic practices or any other functions to get you back. You're perfectly safe. Just allow yourself to become more and more infinite, more and more diffuse, more and more incomplete. Now, this meditation you can make as long or as short as you want. We're just going to be here for a few minutes, but you can make it as long as you want. just dissolve. Just experience beingness, no thoughts, no itches, no scratches, just nothingness and disembodiment and infinity. You are infinite. You are omnipresent. And also you are omnipotent. So just stay here a moment longer. Again, you can extend this as long as you want. But experiencing the formlessness of the multiverse is what the Hindu yogis want you to do first. Just become disassociated with the human form and all the vagaries associated with existing in this particular environment. This is one of their most popular and successful ways to gaining awareness and awakefulness and leading towards full enlightenment. So let's think about bringing ourselves back. So just use your intention to gather all of yourself back into one area of coalescence of your sentience, of your consciousness. Sentience and consciousness are not the same thing, by the way. Use your mentally spoken words to say that you're bringing all of yourself back, that all of your distributed, diffused parts all come back into one particular area. When you've done that, use your intention to come down these frequencies, down from the 408th to the 400, down to the 350th, down to the 300th, down to the 250th, down to the 200th, down to the 150th, down to the 100th, down to the 50th, down to the 20th, down to the 12th, 11th, and coming back into the energies associated with your human form in the 10th, coming down through the higher line from the 10th, in fact from the higher, from the from higher than the 10th, the high line actually, above the 12th in essence. Come down through your higher line, little protective tube, so to speak, that allows you to stay connected with your true energetic self. All this time you've been connected to your true energetic self and your gross physical form, so there's no separation, no full separation anyway, just the experience of separation. So come down from the 10th, 9th and the 8th, and we come into the aspect of the hara line that's in the same location as the crown chakra. And that energy's come down towards the area of the third eye, and past that area down to the areas of the throat chakras, and go past that, past the area of the heart chakras, and finally go down to an area close to where the solar chakra is, which is where the Tantien is. You should be starting to feel yourself getting heavier now, and probably a little bit claustrophobic. So being in the Tantien, which is 3 inches or 7.5 centimetres above the navel, and 3 inches or 7.5 centimetres in towards the centre of the body, your sentient energies now start to redistribute. So first of all, the sentience rises up through the hara line again and sits in an area just behind the heart chakra, the front aspect of the heart chakra, called the soul seat. And then the energies associated with the Tantien that start to animate the body move up from the Tantien up towards the shoulder, animating the upper body, go out through the shoulder area, the shoulder girdle area, up in towards the head, out to the upper arms, the elbows, forearms, wrists, palms, fingers and tips of fingers. So you start to feel your upper body now. Now then you move down from the Tantien down towards the pelvis area, down the thighs and the femurs, the knees, and then down towards the lower legs, tibias, ankles, feet and the toes. And so now your energies are now fully populating all of the energy lines, the energy meridians, the major, minor and mini chakras. So your sentience, or your aspect I should say, is now fully connected back with your gross physical form. And you can slowly come back into the room. Slowly open your eyes. If you've got some water close by, take some drink of water. And that'll help to ground you. Well, that's the end of the Satsanga for this particular month of May. The next Satsanga is going to be 2 weeks after I get back from the Ozark Mountain Publishing Transformation Conference, which is in Eureka Springs in the Ozark Mountains, and it's a wonderful place, absolutely wonderful place. If any of you are in the States and can get to Eureka Springs in Arkansas, it's worthwhile going to the Transformation Conference there. There's a load of great speakers on there as well, and I'm speaking upon the ego. Okay, what is the ego and how it affects ourselves and our incarnate condition. But in terms of our next Satsanga, that's going to be looking like it's the 29th, I think, so it's going to be slightly earlier, of June, because I'll be going to Greece after that for a bit of a sabbatical. So it's going to be June, I think, 29th of June, just before. So it won't actually be on a Saturday, although I'll probably release it on a Saturday. So I'll be generating it on the 29th of June, but on the 1st of July or the 30th of July I shall broadcast it. Okay. So thank you very much for participating, listening and doing the meditation of this Satsanga. Thank you very much for your questions, and thank you to Kevin Moore for being a wonderful person as he is and broadcasting it on his YouTube channel as well, and all of his different medias as well. So God's love to you all, Source's love to you all, and looking forward to working with you again next time. God bless you all, and Namaste.